What's going on, everybody? Bobby Fi here. Sheets should be joining me any second. And let's get into it. We got the playoffs going on. I'm a bit under the weather, and I got a bunch of stuff going on. So sorry if I sound or look a little bit off. I haven't slept much the last couple of days. But Sheets is popping in here, and he gets you. You don't have to look at my ugly face and my sickness and everything. Sheets, how you doing, man?
You don't feel well?
I'm a little under the weather and had a lot of stuff going on, so I haven't really slept much the last couple of days. But I'm excited about the playoffs. And
listen, I just posted this on Twitter. I mean, it's a sneaky, awesome day for DFS that nobody really knows about. So first of all, it's a 4-game MLB slate where, and again, I'm more excited about this than most people because you don't see like kind of what I see every day. Like when I ran the projections and I ran stuff for today, I haven't seen this in quite a while. I mean, you got, first of all, every team is firing their best shot, right?
Yeah.
They're putting their best lineups out. They're putting their best pitchers out. There's no pitch counts. There's no issues. There's no weather issues, right? And the way all these guys are projecting, like everybody's freaking razor close for me, at least.
Right.
And hitting wise too. So I really think this is an amazing slate. You know what I mean? Like you could play stuff you're comfortable with. You could fade ownership and feel comfortable with that too. And remember, it's like they're going to be very few 4-game slates, once teams start to get eliminated,
Right.
and things like that. So between that and the LOL Worlds, which again nobody here is really paying attention to, again this chat maybe, but it's like a 6-game LOL slate, which is this is like the World Championship, which is kind of like it's like playoff day in DFS, yeah. And nobody's paying attention to it. There's a lot of other stuff going on in the gambling community right now. This poker nonsense and all this other stuff. So so no one's really paying attention. I actually didn't even realize till I looked at the slate like late last night or early this morning how great of a slate this could be. And yeah. I'm kind of into this. I'm leaving an hour for the day, so I'll put some stuff in or whatever it is. But I'm glad that I'm able to go through this with you because it's a very I don't know. It's very interesting. I mean, we could go game by game. We could take a slate approach. How do you want to handle this?
Yeah, we can go game by game if you want to. I think it's interesting to note that I don't know if I've ever seen even 4 games on a slate where there's no run total that's above 7. And there's no team with a run total above 3.5.
I wanted to ask you about that, Bobby, because I find myself saying the wrong thing when we have slates like this. And I want to talk through this with you. When you had a slate like this, like a few days ago, with respect to the fact that there was very little, there was good pitching and not so much hitting, and I was saying that, well, on a slate like this, maybe you don't want to like try to 5-man stack, but I want to talk through this with you because when you have like great pitchers and like low totals, isn't it better? Again, I'm not even saying because I don't know the answer. Isn't it better to try a 5-man stack because what you need to get is so little that even those little singles and doubles might be enough, you know what I mean, to win the slate? Or is it still about just really just trying for all that power and stuff like that, which means that you don't want a 5-man stack? I'm kind of confusing myself a little bit.
Yeah, I think it really depends on how you feel about those things. I like Castillo. I'm like a Castillo defender, but there is no reason to me Toronto should have a run total below 4.5 today. I don't see why that's the case. So if you were going to do one, that would be the one stack I would look at a 5-man of. I certainly don't think you should be trying to 5-man stack. I think that would be a huge mistake as a general strategy. On a 4-game slate, it's almost to the point where like I think everybody else is on the same page too. I don't think you have to play more than 2 players from a team if you don't want to. I happen to really like the Blue Jays, and I think that they're going to be probably the most popular of the teams. But I don't think you have to 5-man stack them. I don't see that there's any reason to do that. And you also, one other thing in addition to what you're mentioning, why it does also speak to maybe you would look at a 5-man stack is what, do you try to get the one outlier game? Because one of these teams is probably going to score 7 or 8 runs. But that could all be done by 2 guys even. So it's like really hard to get a 5-man stack you feel great about. But like you said, you don't need so many points. So the correlation really matters. So I think it just depends on how you feel about Castillo. That's really what it comes down to for me.
Well,
I have too much respect for every pitcher, including Castillo. By the way, I've always been a Castillo guy, but everybody else on this slate does just enough to get by and never really gets hit that hard. That it's really hard for me to see how a 5-man stack is going to give you more than 30 points or 40 points if things go the way they're projected today.
So I have a question for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I looked at my projections and I looked at what people are projecting for and all this stuff. And I eyeball the salaries without knowing much of anything for openers. Mm-hmm. I don't quite understand this a little bit. And
they just made everybody affordable.
Well, affordable, but what in the hell is Shane McClanahan doing at 6,300?
But why does he? Everybody keeps saying that about him. He's no different than
Yeah, I don't, because he's 3,000 less.
But so is Manoah. They average virtually the same number of fantasy points.
Okay.
McClanahan hasn't had a good start in 3 weeks. He's been awful. He's gotten crushed. I don't think it's that weird.
All right. Okay.
I am starting him for what it's worth. I'll take the upside, but I don't see him as being any different, standing out to me more than Manoah.
Right. Okay. And that's actually the way my projections kind of pan out. I mean, I have them both very similar. You know what I mean?
Right.
I do have them almost identical in fantasy points, which means they're close enough to being identical as far as value goes. Right. What do you think of the top guys? Let's start with. I mean, you already said that you like Castillo. What do you think of the top guys? What do you think of Scherzer?
No, I don't like Castillo. I think that the run total for Toronto is way too low against.
Okay.
That's what I was saying. Was the way I was going. And everybody's going to do the same thing. I think that the natural thing is going to be play Philly and play Toronto, because I think people just don't have respect for Quintana. And Quintana just doesn't give up home runs. That's it. He just doesn't. Now, is it okay to stack against the guy who doesn't give up home runs? On this kind of slate, I think it is. I'm having trouble getting the weather in St. Louis, but based on the total, I would guess that it must be pretty bad, right? Like, why don't I have the St. Louis weather? Hold on one second. Yeah. Anyway, so everybody's underpriced and everybody's egregiously underpriced. I mean, the truth is Scherzer shouldn't be 9,800 either. None of these guys are priced where they should be, and it's so easy to get all of them in because none of the hitters are either. So you could easily, like, Scherzer and Bieber are the two best pitchers on the slate. McClanahan and Manoah are probably my two favorite pitchers for because you are saving, and it lets me get the expensive Blue Jays that I want. I have my main lineup right now is a 4-1-1-1-1, basically. My favorites would be the Blue Jays, followed by the Mets. Then I would go Philly if I had to pick stacks.
Wow, that's so interesting.
What do you have?
Well, I mean, I was going to make the case. I mean, just again, I was going to attack this slate based completely on ownership, right? So because all these guys look so similar to me.
Yeah,
I kind of like the two guys you don't like. So I kind of like Castillo. And I like Darvish, and for no other reason than I think those are going to be the two lowest owned of the non-Quintanas, and I don't know. I mean, like I see Darvish, and he has some really good games, and he's only 8,400. But like you said, everybody's cheap enough, and. I guess it's just really like kind of like a blender. Just play whoever you want. You know what I mean? I suppose.
Well, no, but there's thought behind it for me anyway. Because the truth is while Darvish does have, he's really good, and Castillo. So I completely get it from an upside perspective. You're facing the two best offenses in the Mets and on the slate, and the Mets and the Blue Jays are the two best offenses. You have the best hitting weather. It appears to be in those games. Right. Well, Toronto because you have the dome, and then the Mets because it's
really nice out today.
Yeah,
it's really nice,
and there's no wind against you. This first game with a 5.5 total, with 54 degrees with 13-mile-an-hour winds blowing in, it just feels like a 2-1 kind of a game, doesn't it? Like a 3-2 kind of a game. So I'm not really taking any hitters in this first game. I like both pitchers. I mean, it's hard not to like every pitcher, and I understand your logic to just take the lowest owned guys. That's fine. I'm totally on board with just taking that stance if you want to, but I don't think it's going to be different. The ownership is going to be different enough, and I honestly can't tell you why Castillo would be as owned as these other guys. To me, I just don't get it. And again, I'm a Castillo guy. I get it.
I don't have it that way. I only have him at 17%, Castillo.
Yeah, but I have everybody. Like it seems like everybody's in the 20 to 30, right? Like
yeah, what I have is I have Scherzer and McClanahan at like 35.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then Bieber at 35 also. So I have those three top guys. You know what I mean? I have Scherzer, Bieber, and McClanahan is really just sucking up like a lot of the ownership.
Right.
And I can't make a case against Wheeler. You know what I mean? Like he's 7,200. And he's going to be in the teens as opposed to in the 30s. I mean, this is why I think this is a really, really cool slate, because then again, I mean, like, what do you really, like I said, with all the hitting affordable, what are you really gaining, you know, by saving the money? I feel as though from a hitting perspective, it just seems logical that the highest owned stack has got to be Philly, right? I mean, because they have the weakest pitcher. That's the way I'm looking. I don't know what the weather's going to be like over there, but Philly's showing up for me as probably the top overall value. So I presume that's what they're gonna be really popular. But as I said, I mean, you can make a case for like every freaking, not every spot, but it's just so, I don't know. I think things are not going to be condensed at all. So I don't know what to do hitting wise too. So what were you saying hitting wise? You like the Mets and Toronto as your two favorites?
I think the Mets and Toronto are your best bets if you wanted to stack. I love Vlad. I really don't like. I would consider if you know on a full slate, is there any game that I would consider attacking a pitcher from here? Probably not. But if I did have to choose one, it would always be Toronto against Castillo.
Yeah, I guess so. Huh?
And that's for me. The next would be Philly, and I think that's what the field will feel.
Yeah.
But if you don't have to do a full stack, and you can get very creative with your stacks today. I like specifically Guerrero, Chapman, and Springer are my three favorite of the Blue Jays. But I also think if you're doing a double spend down at pitching is the only way you can really afford all of them, because I'm playing them with Lindor and I have a one-off of Haniger, even though he's against my pitcher, so I'm trying to just settle that one. I have no problem playing a hitter against your pitcher in general here. But do I go 5-man Toronto? I don't really want to do that. It's just from a game theory thing. I don't think it's right. So I'm trying to decide between like just a one-off of Haniger and what's his name and Teoscar Hernandez. Maybe I should just go ahead and do it, but because I do think that total is off. I think that if there's one bet you make today, it's the over on the Blue Jays Mariners game, and it's the over specifically on the Blue Jays. But I really like Manoah, and I really like McClanahan. Maybe you could argue against them both that they don't have the leash that these other guys do. I still think I'm good with it.
And if you had to pick between like Scherzer and Bieber, who would it be?
Bieber.
Okay.
It's really the conditions. I mean, if you're going to get to Bieber, you want to try to hit a home run or something like that. That's what he does. It's going to be really hard to hit a home run when it's 54 degrees and you have 13-mile-an-hour winds blowing in.
Yeah.
It was already hard enough to hit as it is. But, I mean, the worst form has been Bieber and McClanahan of any pitchers.
Yep.
But they also are my two favorites. I'm sorry, are two of my three favorites. So that's where I am at. Let's see if there's got something else popping up here.
I do think, by the way, that if you were going to play a team against like a chalky pitcher, I think the team to play would be Cleveland. Like you said, I mean, McClanahan has just been kind of shitty recently, and he's going to be really super popular, and that combination is usually something you want to attack.
Yeah, you're playing for singles and stuff. In my opinion, it's just, or you're playing like, how do you play a lefty against McClanahan?
You can't. Yeah.
Only Naylor, and also he never gets lefties can't hit him.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
It's just hard to get the power upside, but maybe you don't need that much of it. You know what I mean? Maybe a couple hits, maybe. I don't know if I'm going to take a quick look. I'm pretty sure he's basically impossible. Well, he's given up, I think, 4 stolen bases all season. So that's, I guess you could say you could run on him, but I don't know. It's hard for me to find the upside there.
I think I agree with you. I think from a hitting perspective, I think my favorite is going to be Toronto. I think.
Yeah, and by the way, I like both sides of the St. Louis and Philly game are kind of interesting hitting wise, because one of the things that makes Wheeler great for DFS and is a great pitcher is he has an incredible leash every time he goes. With that, you get the same thing you get with Nola. Like, you're going to have a guy who challenges people, a guy who's going to be left in there with the bases loaded and nobody out, and maybe he gets out of it. But if he doesn't, they'll let it kind of pour down on him. So that's what I think anyway.
Well, here's the other thing about I was going to ask you about playoff baseball. I mean, because you know more about baseball than I do in general, right? So what I was going to ask you about playoff baseball with respect to DFS is, like, I would think that, on the one hand, these pitchers have big leashes because they want to go for the wins, but yet on the other hand, like, if a team with a good bullpen consensus that the starter's struggling a little bit, I mean, they're going to pull him. You know what I mean? Like there's no like, oh boy, you're XYZ. I got to let you pitch your pitches because otherwise you'll get mad at me. You know what I mean? Like this is the playoffs, and like, for example, if McClanahan's like not finding the plate, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and Tampa's got all these freaking trick pitchers in the bullpen or whatever it is. I mean, they'll pull him. You know what I mean? They're not going to let these guys, especially in these really tight games, like against another superstar pitcher. They're not going to let them play through this with like a 1 or 2 run deficit. You know what I mean? With guys on base. I mean, they're going to do what they have to do.
100%. But it's not everybody who's going to have that. I mean,
right.
They will.
That's what I was asking. Like the teams that have the bullpen to be able to do that.
Well, it's not even the teams with the bullpen. It's really the pitchers that you're talking about, like a young pitcher in McClanahan's case. So that's worth talking about. As maybe he could get wild. You have. There's no way, like, Scherzer's not being limited unless they light him up. Right. And Wheeler is not getting limited unless they light him up, and neither is Bieber. They're not.
And if they light Scherzer up, they'll pull him out just to save him anyway. I mean, like,
but those guys are going to they'll have the opportunity, as I'll say, to give up 7 or 8 runs. Like, it's in there. But I do think that, that everybody's had a couple days off, everybody's healthy.
Yep.
And I'm just going to side with I mean, I like that I get the best lineup, and it's sure it sucks to play some of the chalkier things, but I don't think it's going to be chalky enough. And that's my feeling about the Blue Jays today. And I'm not playing enough lineups because there aren't enough good tournaments, to be honest with you, where I could get to the Philly and St. Louis, but that would be my number 2 game to stack. Let's see whether St. Louis. Yeah, so it's 56 degrees in St. Louis. I can't get the wind direction. Why aren't they updating this on the site? Huh. Not our site, but that's interesting. I don't really know what that's about. It's not a dome in St. Louis, so there's no reason why there's no weather there. I don't know why there's not, to be honest with you. Okay, so mostly winds blowing mostly in from left. 10 miles an hour, and it's 55 degrees. So I think, the Blue Jays and Mets would be my bets. Now, I definitely like them the best. I'll skip my St. Louis and Philly love just because I don't want to be hitting against that.
That's interesting. So Justin, Justin is coming in saying that he feels that Toronto and Seattle are going to be the most popular teams. It would just seem strange to me, to not have Philly as the top stack, just because of the, Quintana just kind of stands out visually as like the worst of the 8 pitchers. So you would, even though whatever the reality is, and you could play all these guys that are sometimes too expensive, like Real Muto and Harper and Hoskins and whoever, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it feels to me like Philly is going to be like pretty chalky.
I think that it's baked into the run total, and that's why I was surprised at that line too. But 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from left at 56, even 56 degrees, definitely takes away my interest. So I get why Toronto and Seattle is getting more ownership, in my opinion. But
yeah,
I would naturally have thought Philly would have been the team if I just had to look once. Oddly enough, St. Louis has a higher run total than Philly does, projected run total.
Okay.
Depending on which thing you're looking at, there's a few different sites that have different things. But you're talking about such fractional things, you know what I mean? Like everybody is so close in these things, and no run totals over 7. That's just, that's crazy to me.
Welcome to the playoffs, man. That's
yeah.
But then when you think about it, it's like kind of cool that the playoffs, not only do you get the best pitchers, but you get the coldest weather, So
yeah,
it's
it's weird.
It's a war,
Yeah, teams come
out.
But
I want to go back to what I was asking you before, because maybe I didn't ask you right about the stacking versus the non-stacking in pitching heavy slates. So what I was going to try to make the argument that you want a 5-man stack again in these situations, because the amount of points you need out of your teams, out of your hitting is so small that you don't necessarily need to go for power. That all you need to go for is the single to drive the other dude in. You know what I mean? As opposed to in the big slates where you need like 100 home runs to get there. But is that not right? I mean, we're still supposed to look at it like, listen, if they have these tough pitchers, we just want to try to pick our best 2 and 3 man.
I don't think that's your way is right. Like I think that you're trying to get the run exposure to the runs, not the. It's just so little correlation at the point you get to a 5-man stack. Those 2 points are not going to win it enough, I don't think. But it depends on the slate. Like if there was teams with a 9 run total today, or a game with a combined 9 run total, I would maybe consider it a really great spot. But there's just nothing that great that stands out to me except for Toronto. That would be the only team I would consider 5-man stacking on this particular. Yeah. What can I ask you a weird question? Who are you playing at second base? It's like my hardest position today to figure out. Like I cannot find a second baseman that I actually feel good about.
I'm just whoever my stacks get me to, I think.
Yeah. You're still doing the stack thing. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering, I guess. Yeah, I don't like any of the second basemen, which is really weird. It's like, oh man. Maybe I can just take.
Yeah, so I'm getting. I mean, just so you know, who I'm getting at second base. Like, well, hold on. I want to change my. Yeah, here it is.
Let's see real quick. I'm just trying to take a look at something, guys. I'll get to, if there's any questions or thoughts, I'll get to those, and we'll get to those in a second.
Yeah, so I'm second base. I'm getting like the aforementioned, Whit Merrifield, right? Like, hitting 11th or whatever he's hitting. Adam Frazier, John, Segura, McNeil from the Mets.
I think McNeil is probably the best play.
Donovan, the Cardinals.
Yeah, McNeil and Donovan are probably my 2 favorites there. I just like the Mets enough today. And I'm interested to see the lineup the Mets put out there. They're one team that could do a few different things with their lineups. Do they play Canna or do they play Naquin? Probably play Canna, but we've seen it go both ways before this season. I'm sort of into the mini Met stack with the Blue Jays as my way to go, and I don't care if I'm getting different enough. I do think. We should point out that that Darvish has like a huge range of outcomes in general as a pitcher. He's been awesome and consistent lately, but this is a guy who walks people. This is a guy who gives up tons of hard contact. I would be trying to get a Met or 2 on like every lineup that's not playing Darvish. At least.
That's probably the right idea.
Yeah, he just gives up so much hard contact. But again, you're not getting way off the board with it. You're going to have to focus on lineup construction and trying not to fully stack, in my opinion, if you're going to want to get off the board in these things. Because even as we said, all these pitchers have this. The only team that's really going to be unowned is Tampa Bay, I think. I think everybody else is going to have some ownership. Maybe San Diego, because the respect for Scherzer, and Scherzer gives up home runs. So I would take a shot on a Cronenworth or a Machado or Soto or Profar or something, because he gives up home runs.
Right. I like that Toronto, even though that they're like the last game where the first one's out with their lineups.
Yeah, I know. I always appreciate those teams that get them in early. Yeah, I agree with what Goldie said about not necessary to stack, but short correlation, price ownership. Yeah, is still worth playing, I think. I don't think it's crazy to play Quintana. I don't see any reason to. I think there's absolutely no reason to do it. But if you want to do it, do it. There's no way I can actually argue with 5,300 Quintana. But like, you're going to need him to be.
I can't do that.
Yeah, you're going to need to have him be one of the top 3 scorers on the slate. Like, you're not going to win this pitcher. You're not. Well, maybe top 4.
Yeah.
Unless they're all within like 2 points.
He's really. I mean, like for openers, he's got to outscore McClanahan. I mean, for openers,
right?
Because everybody you get hitting wise with Quintana, you're getting with McClanahan.
Exactly, I agree with that. I mean, for what it's worth, he's been better than McClanahan by a lot.
That's true.
In all fairness, maybe we don't need the upside as much, but I mean, I'm not doing it. But he's been like Quintana's had a year that probably people just don't realize that he's been really, really, really good in real life.
Right.
Forget DFS, And you look back, what has it been? He's given up 1 home run in his last 20 starts. And this is the guy everybody wants to stack against. Okay. You know what I mean? He just doesn't give up any power. Now, of course, he could on one game or something, but like he's given up home runs in 5 out of 25. Is that right? No, 5 out of 27 starts. I gotta count that. Yeah, it's tough to get home runs off of him. 5,300 is crazy, but it's not that different than 6,300 today. Like, what are you really gaining by moving up?
Yeah.
I feel like this is going to be the day Teoscar Hernandez takes me out of this. Because I'm playing like every Blue Jay but Teoscar Hernandez. And he just has these really weird, random, like 5-hit games all the time. He's really been hot too. His power's heating up. Anyway, I don't have a whole lot else to go through. I'm going to get some rest and eat some soup.
Yeah, you should do that.
Yeah, head is killing me.
Just to give you guys, again, a little heads up. So, there's nothing tonight. I did put up some projections for LOL if anybody's interested. I'm sure DFS Chan is going to be coming in with something for that.
Yeah.
If he hasn't already. And then, by the way, once again, for those of you that followed it, my golf take, my overall top play, like Keith Mitchell, is like T4 after the first round, which is freaking awesome at 8K.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so that was good. Hopefully you guys are off to a good start as far as that goes. And I'm not going to put anything up Golf-Wise Showdown until Sunday. Sunday I'll put up a Showdown slate. There's no MMA this week, so nothing to worry about there. And as far as,
I didn't realize you won a tennis tournament yesterday.
What's that? Yeah, the tennis was strong.
That's awesome, man.
Dude, let me tell you, and again, this is really important when you analyze results and things like that, is you have to analyze things at the time that the slate goes off. You analyze it based on what you did and then, relative to ownership. And what was cool about it is that I identified really early that even though it was a 9-game slate, I was able to secure a couple of unique lineups, which is very difficult to do in tennis on a 9-game slate. And just right off the bat, I thought I did well, and then then I had my 9% guy or player win and all of a sudden, like the whole world opened up for me. I saw that all my unique lineups were just basically almost the nuts, like,
Yeah.
and and that's like really important to not, for those of you who read between the lines of my tweet, like I tweeted yesterday that I was not more excited, but I was equally excited about the fact that I was able to generate the unique lineup in the first place than the fact that it actually won. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it's cool that it won also, but the fact that you can use the process that I use and develop unique lineups that have a chance to win is really good long term. You know what I mean? So that's really important. If you guys, if you guys want to dabble in those types of sports, I think the combination really of the true DFS projections plus the SaberSim kind of, randomizer is the best way I can describe it. Is kind of a good little recipe to get started. I can't promise you'll win just by plugging projections into SaberSim and building lineups, whatever it is, because you do have to do some things, but it's definitely, I think, at least a good combination to at least get you like to break even. You know what I mean? Like before you even know anything about the sport. So, and each time that stuff happens, and I have these SaberSim builds that I look at, I'm like, what the hell do I have? And then it just kind of just like is just in contention for the whole cheese. Like it really. Listen, I was having had a long conversation with someone yesterday. I'll tell you who a little bit later, but it's a kind of a well-known poker dude who I'm going to be doing something with, hopefully for our stream one of these days. Anyway, I mean, he does like DFS and he wants some advice on DFS. So we'll talk about that. But and I was talking to him about this kind of stuff, and it's and SaberSim is really the closest thing to a piece of software that can generate lineups that's based on upside and ownership fade, and that the fact that it's really the only one that does it, and the fact that it's really completely flawed, in my opinion. Like there's a zillion things wrong with it as far as I'm concerned, but it's so much better, and it's the only one that takes a shot at doing it. That it just goes to show that how immature the industry really is. I mean, there's still so much room to get better. You know what I mean? It's not like poker where it's like so many solvers have kind of like just made things really difficult. Here, I mean, if you think about it, the whole key to GPPs is to figure out that mix between a good play and a good GPP play. You know what I mean? A good GPP play and a good ownership play and whatever it is. And the fact that there's only one bit of software that even attempts to do that means that there's a lot of room for growth as far as knowledge. And I think that in 5 years in DFS, we're going to look back at the way people play now and kind of laugh at the same way that we laugh now at the way people played poker in 2006. I really believe that. People are saying that DFS is tough. It's impossible to beat or whatever it is. I really believe that if you look back 5 years from now at the way people play DFS then and the way people play now, I think that it will be a similar discussion to the way people now talk about poker in 2006. I think there's going to be so much development in that thing I talk about all the time. Like what's the trade-off? I mean, like how much in projection can you give up for an X amount of ownership fade? You know what I mean? And the fact that there's no real answer is kind of cool, And I think that 5 years from now, there's going to be closer to that answer. And we're going to look back now, and I don't know the answer because if I knew what it was going to be, I would do it now, right? Right. But you know that 5 years from now, we are going to look back from now and say, I can't believe those idiots in 2022 were playing like X. And if I knew what about it was idiotic, I wouldn't do it anymore. But I really do feel as though that is going to be the case, and which is why I'm continuing to do this, because I think there's a lot of room for speculation. And even like Bobby, when you said, listen, who says that we're supposed to 5-man stack? Just because everybody says we're supposed to, that means we're going to. You know what I mean? Like to challenge these types of things that are just not 100% clear, I think is incredibly healthy and extremely sharp.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I totally agree with everything that you're saying. And I think people do things because they're normal. I mean, when I first started playing, it was like you had to stack in basketball, and then no one.
Oh, really? That's so funny.
It was like, oh, you don't want to stack in basketball because you're all taking away from each other. And I'm like, well, I actually disagree. I think the answer is somewhere in between. If you have an outpaced game, you have guys who correlate well together and are going to get 10 extra possessions in the game. How can I say that game is not that guy's not? That's not a better play than not stacking. Not to mention you always add the 5% chance of the overtime, which makes it logical that you'd want to stack. Anyway.
The thing is, one of the things that's cool is that so when you have an industry like not based, but that's filled with smart people, right? And there are a lot of industries like that. but filled with smart people who are analytical, and then they're also have an ego and all this stuff. Like they come to these conclusions, and they're so sure. And then, like, all of a sudden, like, and listen, for those of you that are following this, I don't want to get too into this.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm interested in what you're
So
going
if
to
you
say.
get a hold of the poker stuff that's been going on the last week or so, it's yes, the whole thing about the cheating or whether there was cheating, that's kind of sort of interesting. But to me, what's insanely interesting is to watch the groupthink and watch like the opinions of really, really smart people just completely like change,
Right.
and there at the beginning of this, like literally, like I would say 95% of what everybody considers really smart people were saying there is no chance that she cheated. There's 80% this. To not only that, they would be citing like, well, those of you that don't agree with me, you're obviously succumbing to Joe Man's amnesia, and you're succumbing to XYZ bias and XYZ cognitive dissonance and XYZ. And this is why poker is not dead, because all people that don't agree with me are so dumb and they're so non-probabilistic and they don't know Bayesian reasoning. And I can't believe that all you idiots out there feel like that. Anybody that disagrees with me, slide into my DMs. Anybody that disagrees with me, take my head to head. Anybody that disagrees, how dumb can a human being be? And then like something happens, and then like they all like not only they change their minds, but now they're like, this is like the most egotistical thing about this group is they're like, well, see, well, now I'm changing my mind, and this is why you have to be smart like me. You have to be willing to change your mind. Excuse me, were you not just freaking telling everybody they were a bunch of freaking morons for having this opinion that now you're coming to? And it's kind of cool in a way to see, the psychology of incredibly smart people just get screwed up and mess with themselves and stuff like that. So, and I think that happens with DFS as well. I really do. I think that people get like, and listen, you watch like a lot of these content providers over the course of the years, even they like trying to change, and even they laugh about it. They're like, can you believe that 4 years ago we were saying this? And but when they were saying that, they were so sure that they were right. You know what I mean? Like, so sure, and then all 4 years they look back at their previous selves, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. So maybe instead of being just so sure you're right at the time you're saying it, why don't you think to the future? Why don't you project out 4 years when you know that you're going to go back and say, oh my God, what an idiot I was? And think right now, what about what I'm doing may or may not be 100% accurate, and make room for the possibility that you don't know everything. So sorry for the rant, but that's
no, I like it, man. I really think you're on fire there. I agree with everything you're saying. I also thought it was interesting doing the thing that you should never do, although last night may have been the exception game. So the guy who won the $1 million last night won it with a unique and a single bullet. Okay. And he won it with 95 fantasy points, which of course means you're captaining the kickers and the defenses only. I don't know what he ended up.
Dude, the guy was a legend. It was my man Alex Pierce, and kickers and defenses.
Was it him? Oh, it was your guy Alex Pierce. Oh, on the lineup. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was like, oh shoot. Okay, yeah.
It was Alex Pierce, and then he took a stand. This is going to be low scoring. So you know what? 2 defenses, 2 kickers. Alex Pierce, somebody else, leave 18,000 on the table or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And LFG.
You know what I mean? On FanDuel, the guy won it on his own, or no, they split it. There was 2 guys who had the same thing, but they left like 15,000 on the table, and that works sometimes. I mean, in a game as bad as last night's game, that's what happens. Anyway, I'm going to run in a minute because I got to get it back to a phone call, which I don't know how much more talking. I'm supposed to do a video today with Rody and with Justin, and I'm just like, my voice just goes. Okay right now. Anyway, Sheets, good luck to everybody. I hope everybody enjoys the beginning of the playoffs. I'll be in Discord all day, all that stuff. And we'll be back with hopefully some videos a little later if I can calm my throat down.
All right.